Hello and welcome to another lockdown special of the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan in lockdown at Mount Macedon.
And I'm Matthew Lucas, locked down here in Melbourne, but we do post every week, so hit subscribe if you want to hear more from us. But Stephen, where are we going this week?
We're off to North America today to look at one of my all-time favourite groups of woodland perennials, and that's the Trilliums. This genus has the most fabulous name. Trillium means in threes, and if you look at the plants reasonably closely, you will notice that they have 3 leaves attached to the top of the stem. They have 3 sepals, which are the bit behind the petals. They have 3 petals. They also have 6 stamens and 3 ovary parts. So everything is in threes, and one of the common names, Trinity flower, does make quite good sense. They're also known as wake robins, which means that they're in flower before the robins come out, so they're a very early flowering plant. And they're a beautiful genus that is mainly restricted to North America. There's about 47 accepted species, 38 of which belong in North America, and there's a few Asian ones, and they extend right across into 1 or 2 in Afghanistan. So it's an interesting genus of plants, and in fact it's so well loved in North America, as those of you from there will already know. The province of Ontario and the state of Ohio have selected Trilliums as their floral emblem.
What a great name. It does sound like a character from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But if you do want to know more about Botanic Latin, you should follow this link and watch our video about botanic plant names. There you go. I had no idea they were most commonly found in North America. For some reason, I thought they were a Chinese woodland plant. But there you go. I live and learn with Stephen Ryan.
So they are really well thought of in the US, but they're not terribly common here in Australia. You don't often see them in quantity here, and the reason for that is they're extremely slow growing. So to see a large colony of like this takes many years. They take something like 6 to 8 years from seed to start flowering, and the clump itself takes many years to build up a good quantity. One point of warning I'll make at this point: never, although they'd be lovely to do this with, never pick Trilliums for putting in a vase, because you're taking the leaves off as well as the flower, and that will inhibit the plant and it will set it right back, and it may in fact become a non-flowering clump the next year. So enjoy them in the garden, but don't in fact pick them for the house.
And yours look amazing, Stephen. I love the fact that the flowers are upward facing, because, you know, I dislike hellebores intensely because the flowers drop down, and that might be a scandalous thing to say. But we also now know not to pick Trilliums.
If you grow Trilliums really well, then they'll eventually start to self-seed, and you'll need to be able to recognise the seedlings so that you don't accidentally pull them out. In the first season, they will come up with a little tiny narrow leaf. So there's first year seedlings there, and so you need to be able to recognise them as Trilliums. In the second season, they generally come up with just a broader bladed leaf. And in the third year, they will actually come up looking like Trilliums. So they're still probably 3 years away from flowering, like these big ones are here behind me. So patience is of the essence if you're going to grow this group of plants.
So in the right conditions, they're going to self-seed and make a clump like one of yours. And I love the fact that you have got the 3 stages of seedling, from that little leaf to the second year to the third year, when you get the trilogy of 3 leaves. Now, Stephen does like pointing this out as well. They are slow growing, as you can see, which means it takes a long time to produce seedlings and new plants, which means that is why they can be quite expensive to buy. We should also point out that they are a herbaceous perennial, so they are going to die down in early summer as the heat starts to increase.
This particular Trillium is grown in Australia as Trillium chloropetalum. It's probably more likely a hybrid, but it's close to the original species. It comes from California, and it couldn't have a more inappropriate species name, because chloropetalum means green petaled, and you rarely see it in green. It tends to be more in whites and burgundies, but a stunningly beautiful plant and one of the really best of the genus.
Well, yours do look amazing, Stephen. So what are the ideal growing conditions for them?
So how to grow Trilliums? They like woodland conditions, because that's of course what they come from naturally. So they need a soil that's really high in humus, so lots of leaf mould and compost and so forth. moisture without wetness. They certainly don't want to be in a wet, soggy spot. And of course, they like late winter light, summer shade. So they normally grow in deciduous woodlands. So you need to be able to try and copy that as close as possible. In North America, they're considered to be hardy in zones 4 to 9. And of course, the North American zones are all about cold hardiness. In Australia, that's not an issue. What we've got a problem with here is our hot, dry summers. So they will do better in the cooler parts of Australia. They'll certainly grow well in Tasmania, they'll grow in the Blue Mountains, Mount Macedon, the Dandenongs, and perhaps the Adelaide Hills, where you also have not only the cool climate, but you have those humus-rich soils. So it's about good soils with good drainage but never too dry, overhead shade in the summer, but light in the winter when the plants are really actively growing. So deciduous woodlandy conditions need to be simulated as close as possible. They don't in fact grow well in pots. They need to be out in the ground where possible. So I wouldn't keep them long term in a container. And as long as those conditions are fine, they will grow and then their seedlings will form. So if you're going to plant trilliums, I'd suggest you did it 20 years ago.
That does remind me of the phrase, when is the best time to plant a tree? Last year. But in the case of trilliums, it's 20 years ago. No pots. Here am I in our rental while our house is being renovated and I'm growing all my perennials in pots, but clearly I won't be able to grow trilliums.
This little plant has for a long time been known as Trillium rivale. Now it's actually been taken out of the genus and put all by itself into a genus rather strangely called Pseudotrillium, so mock or pretend trillium, but I thought it deserved to be in our post on trilliums. It's probably the one for those who are really, really impatient. It will flower within 3 years of being sown as seed. It clumps up quite well, and it's a beautiful and diminutive little plant for a rock garden in the shade. So Pseudotrillium rivale, what was known as Trillium rivale. I couldn't let our Trillium special go past without showing you a piece of beautiful botanic art. This is a Trillium painted by Craig Lidgerwood, my partner, that was accepted into the 16th International Exhibition of Botanical Art and Illustration at the Hunt Institute of Botanical Documentation at the Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It only happens every 3 years, and this was the 2019 exhibition, and this image was one of 41 accepted from all around the world.
And just a quick thank you to Craig, who not only is also a great botanic artist, as you saw, but he is also a brilliant camera operator because he is shooting all the footage of Stephen in the garden in Macedon. So thank you, Craig.
Well, I do hope you've all enjoyed our video on trilliums. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and press the alert button so you'll be reminded when next week's video comes up.
What a wonderful group of plants. And if you have any questions, do put them below because Stephen is a bit of a trillium guru. As you can see, he's got, I think I could say, perhaps one of the best collections in Australia. Thank you so much for watching our Lockdown Trillium special, and we look forward to seeing you next week.